Hello, everyone. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time it is. That way, YouTube will keep pulling you into stories like this. Now, let the shadows take over. I didn't go down to the beach house to find trouble. I went there to disappear for a while. This was last year, early May. One of those seasons when the beach towns are just barely waking up from their winter coma. Tourists haven't flooded in yet. The water's still too cold to swim, and the rental homes are mostly empty. It's quiet. Too quiet for some. Perfect for me. I'd just gotten out of a pretty rough breakup. 4 years of cohabiting, planning futures, mingling families. Just gone in the space of 2 months. I moved my things into storage, crashed on my sister's couch for a bit, and tried not to unravel. But after a week of insomnia and sitting in dark rooms, my sister forced me to take her offer. Spend some time at the family beach house, clear my head, get some distance. She even framed it like a favor to her. I need someone to check on the place before summer anyway, she said. Run the water, make sure the breakers are on, sweep for any mice. You'd be helping me out. So I went. The drive was longer than I remembered, almost 4 hours from where I'd been staying. I didn't even have music playing for most of it. Just the hum of the tires, and my thoughts bouncing around the cabin like ghosts. The house itself is tucked away on a quiet stretch of beach in North Carolina. Not oceanfront, but close enough that you could hear the waves on a windy night. 2 floors, big deck, and a narrow back pathway leading to a public beach entrance through the dunes. It's nothing fancy, but it's got history. My dad and uncle built parts of it themselves. I've spent summers there since I was a kid, but I'd never stayed there alone. The first day was uneventful. I unlocked the front door, let the musty air out, checked the fridge, still humming, and turned on the water in the kitchen and bathrooms to flush out the pipes. I opened every closet, more out of habit than caution. Everything was exactly where it should be. The sunroom in the back of the house was always my favorite spot. It's not huge, just a long, narrow room with wall-to-wall windows looking out toward the dunes, 2 wicker chairs, a dusty bookshelf, and a wide chaise lounge. I curled up on that thing as a kid and read Goosebumps until the sun went down. That night, after microwaving a frozen lasagna I'd brought with me, I grabbed a blanket and settled into that sunroom again with my laptop and a glass of wine. The house creaked like it always did. You learn not to jump at every pop of the wooden beams or every distant howl of wind brushing sand off the deck. But something was off. I don't know how to explain it, other than saying the silence felt too heavy. Like the house was listening to me. I chalked it up to being alone and overly emotional. It was around 12:30 a.m. when I stood up, stretched, and made my way to the back door, the sliding glass door that opens from the sunroom to the small back patio. When I went to lock it, I stopped. It was already locked. Now, that may not sound strange, but I hadn't locked it. I know I hadn't. I had opened it when I aired the house out earlier in the day. I remember shutting it behind me when the breeze kicked up, but I never locked it. And yet, the latch was flipped down tight. I even tested the door to be sure. It wouldn't budge. A chill crawled down my neck. I glanced over my shoulder, scanning the dim room, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow and creak. The logical side of me whispered, maybe you did lock it and forgot. The emotional side, it said, someone else is in this house. I tried to ignore the feeling. I double-checked the rest of the doors and windows, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to sleep in the guest room. I left the hallway light on. That night, I barely slept. At some point, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the floor below. I held my breath, eyes open in the dark, listening. The sound lasted maybe 20 seconds. Then silence. When I finally worked up the courage to tiptoe downstairs, baseball bat in hand, I found nothing. No signs of entry. Nothing out of place. But the sunroom door? Unlocked. The next 2 days were a blur. I tried to enjoy myself. Took long walks, cooked breakfast, read on the porch. But something in the house shifted. I'd leave the bedroom light off, come back to find it on. My toothbrush was moved. A spoon was in the sink even though I hadn't eaten anything requiring one. I told myself I was just paranoid. On the third night, I video called my sister. I didn't even tell her anything was wrong at first. I just wanted to see her face, hear a familiar voice. But she noticed something right away. "Why are the windows behind you so dark?" she asked. "What do you mean?" I turned, confused. I was in the sunroom, facing the dunes. The moon should have been lighting the beach, but the windows were black. Not dark, black. Like someone had taped trash bags over them from the outside. Except, it wasn't tape. It was shadows. Moving shadows. One of them passed across the glass. I turned back to the screen and whispered, "I think someone's outside." I killed the call and moved slowly toward the kitchen, grabbed the bat again. Every instinct in my body told me not to look back. But I did. And I swear to you, just for a second, I saw someone standing inside the sunroom. A man. Not moving. Just watching. And then he was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, I called my cousin, who co-owns the house with my sister. He was in Florida on a work trip. When I told him what was going on, he went dead silent for a long moment. Then he said something that froze my blood. "Check the sunroom floor vent." "What?" "The floor vent. Near the chaise lounge. There's a crawl space under that room. I forgot it even existed. We sealed it shut years ago after a raccoon got in through it. But if that panel's open..." I was already moving toward the room. I dropped to my knees beside the floor vent. It was a wide metal grate, flush with the floorboards. I pried it up and nearly dropped the phone. Because underneath was a black hole, a square cutout, roughly the size of a manhole cover. And it was open. I called the police. They swept the property, didn't find anyone. But when they looked inside the crawl space, they found discarded food wrappers, a half-empty bottle of water, and a ratty blanket stuffed in the corner. Someone had been living under the house. The officers said he must have come and gone through the dunes, using the crawl space to sneak in and out through the sunroom. They didn't find him that night. But I did. The next evening, I checked into a motel and tried to calm myself down. Around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from a smart camera app I forgot was still installed from when we used the house during summers. Motion detected. Sunroom camera. My heart dropped. I tapped the alert. There, in grainy black and white, was a live feed of the sunroom. A man standing by the chaise lounge, holding my wine glass, and looking directly into the camera. I never went back. We sold the house 4 months later. And the sunroom? We bricked it shut. This happened 2 summers ago, during what I thought was going to be a quiet, solitary weekend at my aunt and uncle's beach house in North Carolina. They'd gone on a cruise for their anniversary, and their son, my cousin Liam, had the spare key. I'd just gotten out of a stressful project at work, and I needed a few days to shut off from everything. No coworkers, no texts, just peace and ocean air. I asked Liam if I could stay there for a few nights, and he agreed immediately. He even joked that the only catch was that I had to survive the place alone. I assumed he meant the creaky pipes and outdated Wi-Fi. The house sat just outside of a little coastal town called Belmere, quiet, half forgotten, and mostly occupied by retirees or summer tourists. The house itself wasn't huge, but it had character. Whitewashed siding, sea blue shutters, a wraparound deck, and tall dune grass curling against the fences. It was a place I remembered fondly from childhood summers, running barefoot through the sand, roasting marshmallows, sleeping on worn-out couches after long days at the beach. I hadn't been there in nearly a decade. I arrived on a Friday evening around 6 p.m. The sky was soft with light, the ocean breeze calm, and everything about the house felt familiar. At first, I brought my duffel in, opened the windows to let the breeze cut through the stale air, and wandered around with the casual comfort of someone who knew the place. Nothing much had changed. The same beachy decor, the same ceramic sea turtles mounted on the wall, the same creaky floorboard 2 steps into the hallway. It was like walking into a time capsule of every summer I'd ever known. But when I got to the second floor, something didn't add up. There were 3 doors at the top of the staircase. Now, that might sound like nothing, but it stopped me in my tracks. There were only ever 2 bedrooms upstairs. I was absolutely sure of it. One belonged to my aunt and uncle, large, with a queen bed and a sliding glass door that led to the upstairs balcony. The other was the guest room, smaller, where Liam and I used to stay as kids. There was never a third door. Not once. Not in any of the years I'd stayed here. But now, there it was. The usual 2 doors were in their correct spots, one on the left wall and one at the end of the hallway. But now there was another door on the right, directly across from the stairs. Closed. Plain white. No sign of recent installation, no scuffs, or paint differences. It looked like it had always been there. I stared at it for a long time. I even walked back down the stairs and came back up, thinking maybe my memory was just warped. Maybe the layout had always included a third room, and I just never noticed. But that didn't make sense. I remembered playing tag in that hallway as a kid, running between those 2 rooms. I would have seen this door. I should have seen it. I texted Liam a photo and asked him if they had renovated. No response. I figured maybe he was working, so I left it alone. I chose to sleep in the old guest room, like I always did. But that night, I couldn't get comfortable. Something about the energy of the house felt wrong. There was a low-frequency hum in the walls I hadn't noticed before. Not a mechanical sound, more like the feeling you get when a room is too quiet, and your own blood starts to sound loud in your ears. At 2:47 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. There wasn't any loud noise, no knocking, no thunder, just a creeping, instinctual discomfort. Then I heard something from the hallway. It was a light, rhythmic tapping sound, like someone gently knocking, not on my bedroom door, but on the wall behind my bed. I froze in place, straining to listen. The tapping stopped for a few seconds, then started again. This time, louder and quicker. It sounded like fingernails against drywall. I rolled out of bed as quietly as I could and opened the door. The hallway was empty. The air felt colder now. I looked toward the strange third door, and it was open about 6 inches. I stared at that gap, expecting someone, anyone, to peek out from the darkness beyond it. But no one did. The door remained still. No movement. No sound. Just a dark, empty space on the other side that shouldn't even exist. I slowly walked toward it, but something inside me, pure animal fear, stopped me from touching the doorknob. I shut my bedroom door, locked it, and sat against it until morning. The next day, I walked the perimeter of the house, checking for signs of new construction. I even climbed under the deck to see if there was a new crawlspace access. Nothing. I looked online for old floor plans and county records. Only 2 bedrooms showed up on the blueprints. No mention of a third. Still, no word from Liam. When night came, I decided I'd had enough. I was going to open the damn door and settle this. I figured it might be a new storage room, or maybe even an old utility closet that had been expanded. I wanted a rational explanation. Something that would make the creeping fear in my chest feel foolish. I stood in front of the door, took a breath, and turned the knob. It opened without a sound. What I saw on the other side was not a closet. It was another hallway, dimly lit, narrow. The floor was tiled in pale green squares, the walls a faded off-white, stained near the baseboards like an old hospital wing. It stretched much farther than the depth of the house should have allowed, at least 40, maybe 50 feet. And at the very end of the hallway was another door. This one looked older. Heavy. Steel, almost. I should have shut the door and left right then. But something pulled me in. I stepped inside and immediately noticed that the air felt different. Denser. Still. My footsteps sounded louder than they should have, like the walls were listening. As I walked down the hallway, I passed small plaques mounted at shoulder height on the walls. They had names etched into them. Dozens of names. Some I didn't recognize, some that sounded vaguely familiar, and one that made me stop in my tracks. Liam A. Strayer, 1993 to 2022. Status: claimed. I stood there staring at it for at least a full minute. Liam hadn't responded to my messages. Was this some kind of sick joke? A prank? But then I realized I hadn't heard from him in over a week. That wasn't like him. And he hadn't posted on social media either. I turned to run, but the hallway behind me was gone. It was just a solid wall, seamless. The door I had entered through had vanished. I continued forward, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't have a choice. When I reached the door at the end, I hesitated. There was a strange smell in the air, bleach and something coppery, like blood. I pushed the door open slowly. Beyond it was a small room, round, windowless, and lit by a flickering ceiling light. The walls were covered in photographs, all pinned with rusted nails. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them. Some were old Polaroids. Some were printed from digital cameras. Some were black and white. Every photo showed someone sleeping. People in beds, on couches, in cars, in basements. And then I found one of me. I was sleeping in the guest room. My bag was on the floor beside me. My mouth was slightly open. I didn't even look like I was posing. I looked unconscious. The timestamp on the photo was from the previous night. 2:49 a.m. I stepped back, heart racing, and bumped into something. It was another person. A man. Mid-40s. Bald, pale skin. Eyes completely unfocused, like he was looking through me. He didn't move. He didn't speak. Just stared past me with a faint smile on his lips, like he was waiting for something. I backed away quickly, and as I did, I saw more of them. Figures, all lined along the edge of the room, standing still, silent. Some were teenagers. Some looked elderly. A few were children, all of them just watching. I turned and bolted. I don't remember how I got out. I blacked out. Or maybe I ran through another hallway and ended up back where I started. All I know is that I opened my eyes, and I was lying on the floor of the second-story hallway, outside the third door. It was shut again, and locked. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I had one new message, from Liam. It was a single photo, a picture of the hallway with 3 doors. Except now, there were 4. The new one was at the far end, painted black. Underneath it was a caption, "You opened the third." Now someone else opens the 4th. I never went back to that house again. Liam was never found. His parents thought he'd run off with a girl he'd been seeing. The police didn't take the missing persons report seriously. But I know the truth. The third door wasn't added. It was revealed. And I don't know how many more are waiting. Before we jump into the next story, if you're enjoying these creepy tales, hit that subscribe button. We've got fresh horror chills waiting for you every night. I'd just broken off my engagement when I decided to stay at the beach house. It wasn't mine. It belonged to my ex-fiancée's family, an off-season rental property on the Outer Banks that her father bought as a passive income investment. But for the better part of 2 years, it felt like it had become mine, too. Every other weekend was spent driving down there, stocking the fridge, hanging out on the porch swing, watching sunsets from the upstairs balcony, while my ex flipped through Zillow listings and talked about renovations she'd never actually start. So when we split, the house became something of a ghost. Not hers, not mine, just floating between us, like some weird leftover from a life we no longer shared. But I still had the key. She never asked for it back. And that particular week, I needed to get the hell out of the city. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I turned my phone on airplane mode, packed a duffel, and made the drive down the coast with no real plan. Just space. Just quiet. The house was exactly how I remembered it. Empty. Cold. The kind of cold you don't feel until you've been sitting still for 10 minutes, then realize your hands have gone numb. I walked through it like I was sneaking into someone else's memory. Everything was still in place. The tall bookshelves we never filled. The record player she insisted on buying and never used. The whiteboard calendar in the kitchen that still said, May 2022. I dropped my bag in the smaller guest room upstairs. I didn't feel like sleeping in the master bedroom. Too much old weight in that bed. Too many conversations that ended in silence. By the time I unpacked and settled in, it was already dark. I cooked some boxed mac and cheese, poured a glass of wine, and sat in the living room scrolling through old emails. After about 20 minutes, my laptop pinged. New Wi-Fi network available. Guest House 5G. That caught my eye. That wasn't the name of the Wi-Fi we used to connect to. Ours was something boring like Netgear 44 or OBX Home. This new one had a stronger signal and no password. Out of curiosity, I clicked it. Instant connection. My laptop screen glitched for a second. Just a flicker. Probably nothing. I opened YouTube to stream some music while I cleaned up, but something strange happened. Before I could click on anything, a video started playing automatically. Full screen. The video was dark at first, then flickered into focus. It was a live feed of the beach house, from above. I could see myself sitting on the couch. In real time, I slammed the laptop shut so hard it echoed. For a full minute, I didn't move. I sat, frozen on the couch, hand still hovering above the closed laptop. Then I slowly turned and looked at the ceiling. No cameras, no vents, nothing out of the ordinary. I opened the laptop again. Nothing played. Just my normal browser screen. The Wi-Fi still said I was connected to Guest House 5G. I disconnected and turned off the laptop completely. My heart was pounding in my chest. I told myself it had to be a prank, a cached video, something weird left over from the last guest. But that didn't make sense. I hadn't seen any security systems installed, no smart cameras. And even if there were, why would it stream directly to my laptop like that? I turned off all the lights, locked every door and window, and went upstairs. I left the hallway light on. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up gasping. I don't know if it was a dream or a noise that startled me, but I remember sitting straight up in bed, completely soaked in sweat. The air felt wrong, thicker, like the pressure had dropped suddenly. I reached for my phone to check the time, and that's when I saw the notification. Airdrop request from Guest House 5G. 1 photo. My airdrop was on. I never use it, so I forgot to disable it. The preview showed nothing but static, gray and white lines like an old TV. I declined the request. 5 seconds later, it popped up again. 1 photo. I declined. Again. 1 photo. I turned off Bluetooth, turned off Wi-Fi, powered the phone down completely. That night, I barely slept. In the morning, I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe someone nearby had named their router something creepy and set up a prank network. I remembered a news article I'd read once about people trolling Airbnb guests by naming their hotspots Surveillance Van 001 or You're Being Watched. Maybe that's all it was. A dumb joke. I reopened my laptop and deleted all saved Wi-Fi networks. I manually selected the old network, OBX Home, and entered the original password, which I still remembered. It worked, just like old times. But an hour later, while I was sitting on the deck trying to read, I got another notification. New Wi-Fi network available, Guest House 5G. I wasn't connected to it, but it was back. Full bars. I went inside. The house felt colder again. I turned up the thermostat. No change. I made coffee, stood in the kitchen, and stared at the framed black and white photo hanging by the pantry door. Except, I didn't remember that photo. It showed a figure sitting in the very same guest room I had slept in. A man. The photo was old, grainy, with faded edges. The man was sitting on the edge of the bed, head down, hands clasped. The room looked the same, down to the bedspread. I stepped closer and squinted. It wasn't just a man. It was... I tore the photo off the wall, flipped it over. Nothing on the back. No markings. No date. No signature. I searched the house for more, rifling through drawers, opening every closet, scanning every framed photo. I found 2 more. One in the master bedroom closet, showing me at the kitchen table, eating cereal. And one in the laundry room, a dark, motion-blurred shot of me sleeping. All in black and white, all with timestamps from the past 48 hours. I didn't know what else to do. I called my ex. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail, rambling, borderline incoherent. I didn't even tell her what was happening. Just that something was wrong with the house, that I needed to know if anyone had been there recently. I begged her to call me back. She never did. That night, the Wi-Fi connected on its own. I hadn't touched my devices. I had turned everything off. And yet my phone buzzed at 1:44 a.m. with a push notification. Connected to Guest House 5G. I was in bed. Lights off. Blanket pulled to my chest like I was a child hiding from a monster. My hands trembled as I unlocked the phone. The screen went black for a moment. Then the camera activated. The front-facing camera. It showed my face, lit only by the glow of the screen. Then it flickered. The image shifted, just slightly. In the reflection of my eyes, I saw another person standing behind me. I threw the phone across the room. I didn't sleep. At sunrise, I left. I packed my bag in 5 minutes, didn't even change clothes. I locked the house, threw the key in the dunes, and drove. 3 hours later, I pulled into a gas station, opened my laptop, and wiped the hard drive. Full factory reset. I did the same to my phone. I changed every password I had. I deleted my social media accounts. Everything. For a while, things were quiet. Then last week, months after I left, I got an email from a private domain. No subject, no body, just an attachment. It was a video file. I didn't want to open it. But curiosity won. The video was shot from the ceiling of the guest room at the beach house. It showed me sleeping, breathing slowly. Then the blankets began to shift. Not from me moving, from underneath. Like something was rising beneath me, climbing up, invisible, unnoticed. I paused the video, rewound it, paused again. Frame by frame, I watched a shape take form under the sheets. A figure. A face pressed against the fabric, smiling. And then, right before the video cut out, it opened its eyes. They were mine. I threw the laptop in a dumpster the next day. But I still see the network sometimes, when I pass public cafes, gas stations, hotels. It pops up briefly in my available networks list. Guest House 5G, even when I'm nowhere near the coast. even when I haven't connected to anything at all. And sometimes, late at night, I wake up to find my phone unlocked, camera open, recording. But when I check the footage, it's never me on screen. It's someone sitting in the same pose, in the same bed, wearing the same face. This happened in late September, during the final days of tourist season, when the weather cools just enough for people to start going home. But the ocean hasn't yet realized summer's over. My girlfriend Kayla and I had been planning a getaway for weeks. We'd both been stuck in a rut. Her with a string of 12-hour nursing shifts, me juggling a freelance workload that had started to eat up my weekends, and we just needed a reset. Somewhere quiet, somewhere cheap. The listing popped up on a Wednesday afternoon, a beach house rental in a town I'd never heard of called South Kearney. It was right on the edge of North Carolina, practically nudging into the marshes, and it looked fine. Not luxurious, not modern, just clean, minimal, and most importantly, available for a long weekend at a low rate. The photos showed whitewashed siding, a wraparound deck, and pale blue shutters half faded by salt air. The inside looked cozy enough, with pale hardwood floors and mismatched vintage furniture. It even had a little fireplace and a sunroom. The owner, someone named Marcy H., had only a handful of reviews, but they were all glowing. We booked it without hesitation. We arrived on a Friday afternoon, just as the sky started turning gold. The drive had been long and winding, through wooded back roads, over crumbling bridges, past wide, empty stretches of marshland. By the time we reached the house, I was half expecting it to be falling apart in person, but it looked exactly like the photos. The place was still, quiet, and the street itself was nearly abandoned, just a line of similar beach homes, only a few with cars in the driveway. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and dust. Not unpleasant, just old. Familiar in a way. We unpacked quickly and took a short walk to the beach, which was less than 200 yards down a private sandy path behind the house. The wind was light, the waves calm, and not a single person in sight. That night, we made pasta, played cards in the sunroom, and went to bed early. The bedroom was on the second floor, and through the window, we could see the tops of the dunes swaying in the wind. The place was almost too quiet. No cars, no seagulls, no distant music. Just wind and the occasional sound of the foundation settling. The next morning is when we found the hatch. We were trying to locate the breaker box. One of the outlets in the kitchen had stopped working, and I figured it had tripped. The listing mentioned a small utility closet on the ground floor, technically a basement, but only accessible from a locked door outside the house, beneath the deck stairs. I went out with the key Marcy had left in a labeled envelope. The moment I opened the door, I felt it. Cold. Stale air, heavier than it should have been. The room was maybe 10 by 10. Concrete floor, unfinished walls, an old shelf with some paint cans, and a stack of dusty newspapers. The breaker box was easy to find, but just before I flipped the switch, something caught my eye. In the corner, partly obscured by the shelf, was a square section of the floor that didn't match the rest. The concrete around it was smooth and uniform, but this section was newer, lighter in color. Framed with bolts, a recessed handle at the center. It was a hatch. I called Kayla down. She stepped into the basement, arms crossed, a look of concern already forming on her face. "Was this in the listing?" she asked. "Nope." We stared at it for a while. It wasn't locked, just bolted down with 2 latches that were easy to turn. No padlock, no signage, no warning, just a door in the ground. Eventually, I opened it. The hinges creaked, and the smell hit us immediately. Damp, earthy, like wet rocks and old insulation. A metal ladder descended into darkness. I pointed my flashlight down. Went farther than I expected. at least 15 or 20 feet. "Absolutely not," Kayla said behind me, but I couldn't help myself. I told her I'd be down for just a minute, that I wanted to make sure it wasn't some abandoned well or forgotten storage area full of mold or rodents. She reluctantly held the flashlight as I climbed down. The air got colder with each rung. At the bottom was a narrow corridor. The walls weren't made of concrete, but clay, red and moist, with sections of old wood paneling shoved into place like makeshift supports. It didn't look like part of the house. It looked older, like it had been here before the house was even built. The hallway ended at another door, metal, rusted but intact. I didn't open it. I turned around and climbed back up. Kayla was waiting at the top, pale. "That's not part of the house," she said. "I know." We didn't go back down for the rest of the day. We tried to distract ourselves, went for a long beach walk, got lunch in town, played music loud enough to fill the silence. But we both kept glancing at the floor, thinking about what could be down there, why no one had mentioned it, why the air from below felt like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. That night, we heard something. It was close to 2 a.m. We were both lying awake, staring at the ceiling in that weird, uneasy silence, when we heard a thump, then another. It was coming from beneath the house. I grabbed the flashlight. We crept downstairs. The basement door was still locked, but when I opened it, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The hatch was open. The latches were unhooked, the lid slightly tilted, resting on its hinge. Kayla stood frozen behind me, whispering, "Don't go down there again. Please." But I had to know. This time, she followed. We descended together, one rung at a time. The clay hallway was darker now, wettier. My flashlight beam bounced erratically across the walls. The door at the end had something new on it. Scratches. Long, deep grooves across the surface. Like someone, or something, had been trying to claw its way in or out. Against every ounce of common sense I had left, I touched the handle. It was warm. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Kayla pulled at my arm, said my name in a voice I'd never heard from her before. Frantic, cracking at the edge. We climbed back up and locked the hatch behind us. We tried to leave the next morning. That was when we found the sand. It had piled up behind the tires of our car overnight. Wet, heavy sand, like someone had shoveled it there on purpose. The engine started, but the wheels spun in place. The driveway had been clear the day before. There was no storm, no wind strong enough to move that much sand. We shoveled, dug out the tires, got in, and the car wouldn't reverse. It shifted into gear. The engine revved, but it was like something was holding us in place, like we were caught in something deeper than sand. We went back inside, called Marcy, the owner. No answer. Straight to voicemail. We tried every number we could find online. The rental listing was gone, taken down. No cached version. No photos. Nothing. That afternoon, we checked the hatch again. Still locked, still quiet. But now there were footprints in the basement dust. Bare feet, leading to the hatch. Then vanishing. That night, Kayla started sleepwalking. I woke up around 3 a.m. to find her standing at the foot of the bed, eyes closed, mumbling something I couldn't understand. Her voice was low, dry, like it was coming from a throat that hadn't spoken in years. I gently touched her arm, whispered her name. She opened her eyes and screamed. She didn't remember getting up, didn't remember what she said, but her hands were covered in clay. We left everything behind the next morning. Bags, clothes, food, didn't matter. We ran, got to town, found a gas station and begged for a tow. The mechanic said we weren't the first. Apparently, that beach house had been rented out to short-term tenants, off and on for years. Always through private listings, always by word of mouth, always by someone named Marcy. But no one ever met her, and no one ever stayed more than a weekend. 3 days after we got back to Raleigh, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the inside of that underground hallway. Clay walls, a rusted door at the end, and the hatch. Open. At the bottom of the ladder, looking up, was me. Except I hadn't taken that photo. And in the reflection of my flashlight, barely visible on the metal rungs, someone else was climbing up behind me. I'd rented the beach house to finish a novel I didn't want to write. It was supposed to be my creative recharge, a last-ditch effort to meet my publisher's final extension. 1 month. That's what I gave myself. 1 month alone on the Carolina coast, away from the city, the noise, and all the people reminding me I was running out of time. The house wasn't anything special. It was a 2-story place tucked behind a dune ridge in a dying little town called Folly Key. The Airbnb listing had only 1 review, but the price was perfect, and the photos showed decent furniture, Wi-Fi, and a desk with an ocean view. I didn't need much more than that. I arrived on September 3rd. I still remember because I logged it in the journal I brought with me, a habit I picked up in grad school, writing by hand every night before I sleep, just to offload my thoughts. The first entry was simple, September 3rd. Arrived around 4 p.m. Weather humid, but breezy. No other houses visible from the porch. Going to spend tonight settling in and unpacking. This place is quiet. Like, weirdly quiet. By day 2, I was actually enjoying myself. I'd wake up at 8, make coffee, and write for a few hours at the desk in the upstairs bedroom. I didn't touch my phone unless it was for music. No TV, no doom scrolling. Just me, the ocean breeze, and a mechanical keyboard clacking like I was someone who knew what they were doing. At night, I'd journal, keep track of my word count, what I ate, what I thought about. On September 4th, I wrote, 1,233 words written. Not great, but not bad. No weird noises. No distractions. Think this place might actually be good for me. But on the morning of the 6th, something strange happened. I opened my journal to write and noticed something I hadn't remembered adding. A new line, just beneath the last one. You were seen. Written in my handwriting. Same pen. Same ink. But I hadn't written that. At first, I thought I'd scribbled it half asleep or something. I'd been tired. Maybe I'd just jotted down a weird dream or fragment of thought. I scratched it out, turned the page, and kept writing. Told myself it was nothing. That night, I made it a point to write more clearly, to date and timestamp the entry. September 6th, 11:18 p.m. Wrote 1,800 words today. Pasta for dinner. Heard a few odd creaks in the walls, but nothing alarming. Going to bed early tonight. I closed the book and left it on the desk. When I woke up the next morning, the journal was no longer on the desk. It was on the kitchen counter. Now, I'm not the type of person who loses track of things easily. I live alone. I don't misplace stuff. The journal never leaves the desk. I had no reason to bring it downstairs. But sure enough, there it was. Open to a fresh page. A pen resting diagonally across it. The top of the page read, September 6th, 3:09 a.m. And beneath that, you dreamt about the hatch tonight. It was almost open. You should have checked it. I stared at the page for a long time. I hadn't dreamt about any hatch. There was no hatch. And I sure as hell didn't write that. But it was my pen, my handwriting. The same looping letters, the same slight slant. I even recognized the way I wrote the number 3, rounded at the top, sharp on the bottom. Identical. I checked every door and window, all locked, no sign of entry. I told myself I was sleepwalking, that I'd written something half aware and forgot about it. but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was documenting me. Through me. On September 7th, I barely wrote anything. I stared at the screen most of the day, rereading the same 3 paragraphs and second-guessing every sentence. I couldn't focus. Every time I moved, I felt like the walls were watching. I even unplugged the Nest Cam mounted near the porch, just in case someone was watching remotely. That night, I didn't journal. I locked the book in my suitcase, zipped it up, and put the suitcase in the closet. The next morning, the suitcase was still zipped, but the journal was on my pillow. Open. You shouldn't be alone here. That was the first time I considered leaving. I started packing. Just my laptop and charger, a few clothes, essentials. I told myself I'd go into town, grab coffee, get some air. But when I tried to start my car, the engine didn't turn over. Battery was fine. Lights worked. Radio turned on. But the engine wouldn't catch. I looked up a local mechanic, only to realize the town had no tow service within 40 miles. The closest shop was inland, and they only operated during weekdays. It was Saturday. I was stuck until Monday. That night, I fell asleep on the couch with all the lights on. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my journal slapping shut. I bolted upright. No one was there. But the journal was open again. On the coffee table, the page had a new entry. Sept 9. You saw her tonight. In the hallway. I hadn't seen anyone. But the moment I read it, I remembered something. A flash. A shadow. Tall. Still. Standing in the dark just outside the bathroom door while I brushed my teeth. I'd seen it for a second. Thought it was a coat rack or something. But the house didn't have a coat rack. I didn't turn the light on. I just shut the door and went to bed. Had I actually seen someone? Had I forgotten? The entries got worse after that. On September 10th, the journal recorded a knock at the door that I don't remember hearing. On the 11th, it claimed I ate nothing but salt water. The page was warped, the ink bleeding. On the 12th, it simply read, "Don't write anything else. You're not the one telling the story anymore." I tore that page out and burned it in the fireplace. But the next morning, it had returned, taped back in, seamless, like I'd never touched it. And beneath it was a new line, scrawled in a more jagged version of my handwriting. Fire doesn't work here. That night, I made a final entry. September 13th. I'm leaving. I don't care if I have to walk. I'll hike to the main road. I'll call for help. I won't stay here another night. I signed it, folded the page, took a photo of it with my phone. Then I zipped the journal into my suitcase again and went to sleep with my bag by the door. The next morning, the suitcase was gone. Not just opened, gone. I tore through the house looking for it. Closets, under beds, even the crawl space under the deck. Nothing. Like it had never existed. Like I'd imagined the whole thing. I picked up my phone to call someone, anyone, but there was no signal. Not even no service, just nothing. A blank bar. I looked at the clock. It still said 12:02 a.m., but the sun was already up. Time had stopped. I'm writing this now from the back of a hardware store 2 towns inland. I hitchhiked for hours. I don't remember getting picked up. I don't remember the driver's face. I just remember walking along the road with the dunes behind me, the sea wind dead still, and feeling like something was walking just behind me the whole way. When I got here, I borrowed a charger, turned my phone on. The photo of my final journal entry? Gone. No trace. Not in gallery, not in deleted items. But there was a new note in my phone. No sender, just a saved draft. It says, "We write it better than you ever did." I haven't slept in 2 nights. And now, wherever I go, I see people standing still in the corner of my vision. I blink, and they're gone. But sometimes, just for a second, they look like me. I hadn't seen the place in 15 years. Not since the summer my best friend, Jordan, drowned just 100 yards from the porch. Back then, the house belonged to his parents, a long sand-bleached structure with a warped wraparound deck and floorboards that creaked like bones underfoot. They invited me down every summer, me, Jordan, and a rotating cast of cousins, siblings, and tag-along friends. But the summer we turned 17, it was just the two of us. His parents had flown to Italy for a last-minute anniversary trip and left him with the keys and a fridge full of frozen pizza. We were thrilled. No adults. No rules. We spent 3 perfect days doing nothing but floating in the shallows, tossing footballs across the sand, and burning through cheap beer we weren't supposed to have. Then on the 4th day, Jordan went swimming at night and never came back. I told the police I'd fallen asleep on the porch, that when I woke up, he was just gone. They found his body 2 days later, washed up on a sandbar half a mile south. The coroner said it was accidental. There were no drugs in his system, no injuries, just lungs full of water and skin gone pale from the tide. Everyone accepted it, but I didn't, because I heard him call my name. That night, before I fell asleep, just once, my name, from the water, whispered, like a dare, and I ignored it. I moved across the country 6 months after the funeral, told myself I'd never set foot on that beach again. But grief has a way of lying dormant, like something underwater waiting for stillness. And when my mom sent me a Zillow listing for a familiar-looking beach house that had just gone up for a short-term rental, I didn't even hesitate. It was the same place. The siding had been repainted a soft gray. The listing used different angles, but I knew the shape of the windows. I recognized the view from the upstairs balcony. The path to the shore still curved left, hugging the dunes. I don't know what possessed me to book it. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to prove something to myself. Or maybe I was just waiting for someone to give me a reason to stop pretending I hadn't left a part of myself behind that night. I arrived on a Thursday, late afternoon. The air smelled the same, salt and pine. There was a new lockbox on the railing, and a little plastic welcome card stuck to the front door with a magnet. Inside, the house had been redecorated. New furniture, minimalist, soulless. All the warmth had been scrubbed out by the turnover of renters. But some things were untouched. The uneven floorboard in front of the fridge, the crooked light switch in the hallway, the upstairs bedroom window that jammed if you didn't open it just right. The place had been sanitized, but it was still that house. And the moment I stepped inside, it felt like being dragged backward through time. I didn't sleep the first night. I lay on the same couch where we'd played video games and stayed up laughing about dumb things we can't even remember now. I kept expecting Jordan to come around the corner, sunburned, holding a bowl of cereal at 1 a.m. like nothing had happened. But the house stayed quiet. Too quiet. The wind didn't whistle. The boards didn't creak. It felt like everything inside had been holding its breath for years, and only now remembered how to exhale. On the second day, I went down to the beach. I don't know why. I'd avoided it the first night like it was toxic. But something about the light that morning, the way it hit the dune grass, made the ocean look soft. I stood at the edge of the water and stared out at the same spot where they said he must have gone under. It wasn't far. Shallow for at least 30 yards. You'd have to want to drown out there. I kept waiting for something to surface. A memory, a sound, a flicker of movement. But there was nothing. Just the hush of the tide, gently pulling sand from beneath my feet. And then, faint, almost mistaken, I heard it. Eli. That was my name. It came from the water. I spun around, heart hammering, but there was no one in sight. I walked the beach, searched the path, even checked the neighboring homes to see if someone had said it. But there was no one out. No footprints, no wind, just my name, carried by the tide. That night, I had the dream. I was on the beach, but it wasn't day or night, just gray sky stretching to the horizon. I stood at the water's edge, and Jordan was there, waist deep in the surf, staring at me. His eyes weren't accusing. They were tired, like he'd been waiting a long time. He said nothing, just lifted one hand and pointed down, into the water. I followed his gaze and saw the ocean boiling beneath him, bubbles rising, foam thrashing, and something was trying to climb out. I woke up gasping, lungs burning, like I'd been holding my breath for too long. I told myself it was grief, resurfacing guilt, that the house was just bringing everything back. But then I found the photograph. It was on the floor beside the bed. A printed Polaroid, the kind you can't fake. A photo of me, sleeping. Taken from the hallway. Door cracked open. My back turned. I hadn't brought any cameras, and I was alone. Or so I thought. I checked the house from top to bottom, every closet, under every bed. I opened the attic crawl space, found nothing but insulation and dead bugs. The doors were still locked from the inside. But that night, I found another photo. This time, it was on the porch. Same angle, same grain. But I was awake in this one, just sitting on the couch, staring toward the stairs. I don't remember posing for it. I don't remember that moment happening at all. I tried to leave the next morning. I grabbed my bag, locked the door, walked to my car, and found the tires buried in sand. Not just blown or flat. Buried. Like someone had taken a shovel and packed wet beach sand around the wheels and undercarriage. I tried to dig it out with my hands, tore up my nails, bruised my knuckles. The sand kept sinking back into place like it was trying to swallow the car. I walked back inside, shaking. The house was dark. All the windows were closed, even the ones I had opened that morning. And on the floor, in the exact same spot where I'd found the first photo, was something new. Jordan's old wristwatch, still ticking, still wet. I tried calling someone, no signal. My phone kept showing the same notification. No data. Retry in 17 minutes. 17. Our age when he died. It said the same thing for hours. That night, I heard footsteps above the bedroom, pacing. Slow. Heavy. But when I went upstairs, the sound was gone. I stood there for a while, listening to the silence, the kind of silence that has weight, like it's trying to press itself into your ears. Then I noticed the back door was open. The wind hadn't done it. The lock was turned. I stepped outside and saw it, half buried in the sand just beyond the deck steps. A second wristwatch, identical to the first. This one wasn't ticking. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with every light on, staring at the hallway, waiting. Just before sunrise, I heard him again. Eli. Right behind me. So close it could have been my own breath. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. But I knew if I had, he would have been there. Wet. Pale. Pointing. Down. I left at dawn, abandoned the car, took nothing with me, walked the length of the beach until I reached a public parking lot near a motel, and begged the clerk to let me use their phone. I called a friend, told him I'd been mugged, made up some story about a stolen bag and a busted car. I didn't tell him the truth, because even as I said the lies out loud, I realized I wasn't sure what was true anymore. Maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe grief does that to people. Or maybe I never left. Because sometimes, when it's too quiet in my apartment and I close my eyes, I hear it again. That voice. My name. Whispered like it's coming through water. And sometimes, I swear my wrists feel damp,